Welcome to another deep dive. And this time, we're going to be looking at the Saqifah conference, a really, really pivotal event in early Islamic history. And you've chosen a text that frames this event as like a deliberate power grab. So we're going to be unpacking its arguments, right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
This text really dives into the immediate aftermath of Prophet Muhammad's death, arguing that the Saqifah conference, where Abu Bakr was elected the first caliph, disregarded the rightful claim of Imam Ali.
You chose a text, right, that frames the Saqifah conference as this deliberate power grab. So, like, what evidence does it use to support this claim?
Well, the text kind of sets a critical tone from the outset by calling the conference conspiratorial. And it really suggests that those anxieties about leadership after the prophet's death, they quickly devolved into a contest for individual gain, rather than focusing on the community's welfare, which should have been the priority.
The text really emphasizes the timing, doesn't it, of the Saqifah conference. It seems to find it very problematic that this meeting happened, before the prophet was even buried.
Yeah, for sure. It highlights this as a sign of disrespect and a rush to secure power. And this is contrasted with the need to mourn the prophet, right? And to ensure the stability of the Muslim community, which is what should have happened.
So with this backdrop of urgency and ambition, who are the main players vying for leadership?
Well, the text focuses on two main groups. The Ansar, who were early supporters of the prophet in Medina, and then you have the Muhajirun, those who emigrated with him from Mecca. And specifically, the text spotlights the Ansar's attempt to claim leadership.
Okay. It even includes a speech by Sa'd ibn Ubadah, a prominent leader of the Ansar. What does he argue?
Well, he emphasizes the Ansar's, crucial role in Islam, right? And he reminds everyone that they sheltered the prophet and his followers during their persecution in Mecca, and that they fought alongside him in countless battles, defending this fledgling Muslim community.
Okay, so he's building a case for the Ansar's leadership based on their sacrifices, their experience. I mean, it makes sense. They would feel deserving.
Exactly, yeah. He presents their leadership as a matter of both merit and experience, arguing that they were there from the beginning, enduring hardship and risking their lives for Islam.
But there's a key figure that is missing from his argument.
Right.
And the text actually criticizes Sa'd for overlooking the claim of Imam Ali.
Right. Yeah, and that's a central point of the text. It argues that Imam Ali, as the prophet's cousin and son-in-law, was the rightful successor. And by seemingly ignoring Imam Ali's claim, the text suggests that Sa'd, whether intentionally or not, set the stage for conflict and division within the Muslim community.
So this omission is interesting.
Right.
Because it's kind of like the text seems to be implying that ambition, political maneuvering were already at play, even among those closest to the prophet.
Yeah, that's right. And that brings us to another key figure, Umar, a close companion of the prophet. And the text actually portrays him as a cunning strategist, working to secure power for his friend Abu Bakr.
So Umar's portrayed as like the mastermind behind Abu Bakr's rise. What evidence does the text use to support this claim?
Well, the text points to Umar's actions, particularly his alleged delay in appointing a successor, knowing that Abu Bakr was away from Medina. And this delay, according to the text, provided Umar and Abu Bakr with valuable time to gather support.
It sounds like the text is presenting this as a carefully orchestrated plan.
Right.
What does it say about Umar's actions during the prophet's final illness?
The text claims that when the prophet wished to dictate a document concerning his succession, Umar intervened, arguing that the Quran was sufficient guidance. And this is framed as a deliberate attempt to obstruct any declaration favoring Imam Ali and clear the path for Abu Bakr.
That's a pretty bold claim, right? To suggest that Umar knowingly defied the prophet's wishes. I mean, that's a serious accusation.
Yeah, absolutely. The text portrays this as a clear example of Umar prioritizing his own agenda over the prophet's instructions, which it presents as a serious breach of trust. But it's important to remember, right, this is just one interpretation of events. Other historical accounts offer different perspectives on Umar's actions.
So while the text presents this as a very deliberate act, it's up to us to consider the evidence, weigh different perspectives. So what happens when Abu Bakr finally arrives at the Saqifah conference?
Well, he delivers a speech that, on the surface, appears to commend the Ansar for their service. But the text argues that this speech was crafted to mask Abu Bakr's political aspirations.
Okay, so what was the core of his argument? How did he position himself as the ideal leader?
Well, he acknowledged the Ansar's contributions, but he argued that the Arabs would only accept a leader from the Quraysh tribe, the prophet's own tribe.
Right?
So he appealed to tribal loyalty and tradition, implying that only a Qurayshi leader could maintain unity and stability.
So by emphasizing his, Qurayshi lineage, Abu Bakr cleverly inserts himself into the leadership equation. It's a shrewd tactic, but the text highlights a potentially problematic aspect of this logic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It points out that Abu Bakr's argument seemingly excludes non-Arabs from leadership. And it suggests this was a calculated strategy to consolidate power within a specific group, which raises questions about inclusivity and representation even today.
It's fascinating how this event from centuries ago still sparks debate about, representation power dynamics.
Hmm.
With Abu Bakr laying the groundwork for his leadership, what happens to Imam Ali? We haven't heard much about him during this very crucial moment.
Well, that's one of the central points of contention that is highlighted by this text. It argues that Imam Ali was deliberately marginalized during the Saqifah conference.
Okay, the text builds a really compelling case for Imam Ali being the rightful successor.
Mm.
And it delves into, like, historical events, pronouncements to support this argument.
Sure. Exactly, yeah. The text cites several instances where the Prophet seemingly favored Imam Ali, including the event at Ghadir Qum. And according to some interpretations, the Prophet publicly declared Ali as his successor during this event. So the text suggests that those who are vying for power intentionally ignored or maybe misinterpreted these pronouncements.
So the text is suggesting that there was a concerted effort to sideline Imam Ali, even if there was evidence that suggested he was the intended successor.
That's right. And to kind of understand the depth of this perceived injustice, the text delves into the reactions of key figures to Abu Bakr's election, and particularly that of Fatima, the Prophet's daughter.
Yeah, the text highlights Fatima's role in all this.
Mhm.
It portrays her as like a strong, vocal opponent of the outcome at Saqifah.
Absolutely, yeah. She's presented as a fierce defender of her husband's rights and a vocal critic of the process that led to Abu Bakr's election.
And the text even includes like a powerful speech attributed to Fatima, where she directly challenges the legitimacy of Abu Bakr's leadership.
Yeah, it does. Her speech, as recounted in the text, expresses both grief and outrage. And she accuses those who orchestrated the Saqifah conference of betraying the Prophet's trust and manipulating the situation for their own gain.
I mean, that must have been a very emotionally charged speech. What were some of the key points that she raised?
Well, she argued that her husband's right to leadership had been unjustly denied. And she also claimed that she was wrongly denied her inheritance, particularly a piece of land known as Fadak. And the text emphasizes how both of these actions contradicted the Prophet's teachings and wishes.
So the text uses Fatima's speech to kind of further highlight these injustices that occurred during the Saqifah conference.
Yes, and it underscores the deep divisions and emotional wounds that were inflicted during this turbulent period.
And then the text goes on to say that Abu Bakr took further steps to consolidate his power and marginalize Imam Ali and his supporters.
That's right. And one of the most controversial claims is that Abu Bakr actually ordered a raid on Imam Ali's house.
A raid. I mean, that sounds pretty serious. What prompted this action?
The text claims that Imam Ali and a group of prominent companions who were hesitant to pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr were holding a meeting at Imam Ali's house. And Abu Bakr, upon learning of this meeting, felt threatened and instructed Umar to forcefully bring Imam Ali to the mosque to pledge allegiance.
So the text is suggesting that Abu Bakr really viewed this gathering as like a direct challenge to his authority.
Yes, and the text argues that this reaction reveals a willingness to use force to silence dissent and really solidify his power.
It seems that Fatima also plays a significant role in this incident, right?
Absolutely. The text describes a dramatic confrontation where Fatima, along with other women from the household, challenged Umar, reminding him of the Prophet's love and respect for his daughter. And they accused both Umar and Abu Bakr of betraying the Prophet's trust and causing his family immense pain, especially, so soon after his death.
And it's a really poignant detail that the Prophet's body was still in the house during this confrontation. It really emphasizes the rawness of this entire situation. So how did Umar respond to Fatima's pleas?
The text says that Umar ignored their pleas. And in a show of force, he ordered a slave named Kumfud to break into the house and forcefully remove Imam Ali. Fatima tried to intervene, but her efforts were in vain.
This incident, often referred to as the attack on Fatima's house, is indeed a very sensitive topic in Islamic history.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the outcome of this whole standoff? Did Imam Ali ultimately pledge allegiance?
The text claims that despite being threatened, Imam Ali remains steadfast in his refusal to pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr. And the confrontation eventually ended with Abu Bakr backing down, maybe fearing further unrest and backlash from the community.
So the text portrays this incident as like a pivotal moment where Imam Ali, despite immense pressure, demonstrated his unwavering conviction.
Yeah. And it also reinforces the text's overall narrative, right, of this power struggle, where those in authority resort to these intimidation tactics to really solidify their control.
Okay, beyond this dramatic confrontation, the text also delves into another method of control that Abu Bakr allegedly employed. That's economic embargo.
You're right. The text argues that Abu Bakr sought to weaken Imam Ali's position by depriving him of financial resources.
How did Abu Bakr accomplish this? What actions did he take?
Well, one significant action was cutting off Imam Ali and the Banu Hashim clan from their share of the Khums tax.
Okay, for those unfamiliar, could you explain, what the Khums tax is and why this was such a significant source of income for the Prophet's family?
Certainly. The Khums is a tax levied on spoils of war and certain types of income, with a portion traditionally allocated to the Prophet's household for charitable purposes and support of the family. So the text argues that by denying Imam Ali and the Banu Hashim access to these funds, Abu Bakr was attempting to diminish their influence and really weaken their standing within the community.
The text doesn't just present this as, a simple economic measure, does it? It connects this decision to like a broader debate about inheritance and religious interpretation.
Yeah, you're right. The text claims that Abu Bakr actually justified this action by invoking a controversial interpretation of a saying attributed to the Prophet, stating that prophets don't leave behind an inheritance. And using this interpretation, he argued that Fatima, and by extension Imam Ali, were not entitled to any of the Prophet's wealth.
So the text is suggesting this interpretation was a way to justify the denial of Fatima's inheritance and further marginalize Imam Ali.
Exactly. The text strongly contests the validity of this saying, citing contradictory evidence from the Quran and pointing out that this supposed rule wasn't consistently applied by later caliphs.
And this all seems connected to Fatima's earlier claim about, being denied her rightful inheritance, specifically that piece of land known as Fadak. What significance did this land hold?
Well, the text emphasizes that Fadak wasn't just any piece of land. It was a significant source of income for the Prophet's family, and it allowed them to support charitable works. So, by denying Fatima's claim, Abu Bakr deprived her of financial independence. And it kind of struck a blow to her ability to continue her father's legacy of helping those in need.
So by confiscating this land, Abu Bakr weakened the financial standing of the Prophet's family and consolidated his control over resources.
That's the argument the text presents, and it highlights the hypocrisy of this action by pointing out that Abu Bakr and later caliphs had no qualms about granting land and wealth to their own allies and supporters.
It's like a clear example of double standards, as the text points out.
Mm.
So with Imam Ali facing, both political pressure and economic constraints, how did he respond? Did he just, accept his fate?
No, not at all. The text portrays Imam Ali as choosing a path of, patience and strategic maneuvering. While he was steadfast in his belief that he was the rightful successor, he opted to avoid open conflict that could lead to violence and division within the Muslim community.
It's a fascinating dilemma.
Right.
On one hand, he had a claim that was being overlooked, but on the other, he carried this weight of responsibility for the well-being of the whole community.
Exactly. And the text presents Imam Ali as acutely aware of the potential consequences of his actions. He prioritized unity and stability, even if it meant personally enduring injustice.
What reasons does the text give for Imam Ali's decision to avoid conflict? Was it purely a matter of principle, or were there practical considerations as well?
Well, the text outlines several factors. First, it points out that Imam Ali actually lacked the military strength to challenge Abu Bakr's newly established authority. Most of the community had already pledged allegiance, leaving Imam Ali with very limited support.
So even if he wanted to fight, he didn't have the resources.
That's right. And the text makes it clear that Imam Ali understood this reality. It describes how he, along with Fatima, went door to door to gauge support for a potential uprising. But they found little willingness to challenge the status quo.
It's interesting that they actually, sought to assess their options and the level of support that they could expect. It speaks to the difficult choices that they faced. Were there other reasons beyond, just lack of military support?
Yes. The text emphasizes Imam Ali's deep commitment to the unity of the Muslim community. It portrays him as someone deeply concerned about the potential for violence and bloodshed if he were to challenge Abu Bakr's rule.
So he prioritized the needs of the community above his personal ambitions.
That's the image the text paints. It suggests that Imam Ali believed that preserving the community's unity was paramount, even if it meant sacrificing his claim to leadership. He saw the potential for chaos and division if a civil war erupted, and he was unwilling to risk that outcome.
It really humanizes Imam Ali, doesn't it? He wasn't just a symbol. He was a leader grappling with incredibly difficult choices. But this doesn't mean he stayed completely silent.
No. The text points out that Imam Ali never wavered in his belief that he was the rightful successor. And it mentions a poem that is attributed to him where he expresses his sorrow and laments the oppression that he faced.
It's like a form of passive resistance. He may not have taken up arms, but he continued to voice his dissent. So what ultimately happens to Fatima? How does her story end, according to this text?
Tragically, the text states that Fatima died just 6 months after the Prophet, consumed by grief and anger over the events that had transpired. And it even claims that due to the pain and betrayal that she felt, she requested to be buried at night without Abu Bakr or Umar present.
That's a heartbreaking detail. It really emphasizes the deep rift that had formed. So with Fatima gone and Imam Ali marginalized, the text moves on to analyze Abu Bakr's style of governance and the long-term implications of his rule.
Yes, and the text focuses on Abu Bakr's efforts to consolidate power and secure his position. And it highlights his strategic appointment of loyalists, especially members of the Umayyad clan, to key positions of authority.
Wait, the Umayyads, weren't they like staunch opponents of the Prophet in Islam for years? It seems surprising that Abu Bakr would place so much trust in them.
That's precisely why the text views this as a significant turning point. It argues that by empowering the Umayyads, Abu Bakr inadvertently paved the way for their eventual rise to power, and, according to the text, the subsequent oppression and corruption that characterized their rule.
I mean, it seems like a risky strategy. What specific examples does the text provide of how Abu Bakr favored the Umayyads?
Well, the text points to several key appointments. Abu Sufyan, a figure who only embraced Islam after the conquest of Mecca, was appointed governor of a large region. His son, Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan, was given control of Syria, and other prominent Umayyads were given control of important centers like Makkah and Taif.
So the text is arguing that Abu Bakr surrounded himself with individuals who had a history of, opposing the Prophet and his message.
That's right, and it contrasts this with the marginalization of the Ansar, who had been unwavering in their support for the Prophet from the very beginning.
It seems like the text is suggesting that these appointments were driven more by political expediency than by genuine concern for the well-being of the Muslim community. What about the Banu Hashim? How were they treated under Abu Bakr's rule?
The text claims that they, along with the Ansar, were largely excluded from positions of power.
So despite their close ties to the Prophet, both the Ansar and the Banu Hashim were sidelined.
Yes, and the text argues that Abu Bakr actually saw both groups as potential threats to his authority and chose to consolidate power by elevating those who had previously opposed the Prophet.
It's a stark contrast, isn't it, to that vision of unity and inclusivity that the Prophet had preached. So what's the text's overall assessment of Abu Bakr's rule given all of these actions?
The text presents a very critical view of Abu Bakr's leadership, portraying it as being marked by a focus on power consolidation, favoritism towards certain groups, and the suppression of dissent.
It's a perspective that really challenges the more traditional accounts of Abu Bakr as a pious and just leader.
Exactly. And this is what makes this text so thought-provoking. It encourages us to reconsider established narratives and engage with alternative interpretations of this crucial period in Islamic history.
This deep dive has definitely gone beyond a simple recounting of events. We've explored claims of, conspiracy, betrayal, the use of force, economic manipulation, all within the context of this power struggle for leadership after the Prophet's death.
You've summarized it perfectly. And while the text focuses on this specific historical event, it raises questions that are timeless, and they continue to resonate within Muslim communities today. Questions about leadership, legitimacy, justice, the use of power.
Before we wrap up, I think it's important to address a key question. Why does any of this matter today? Why should we, centuries later, care about a disputed election in a fledgling community in, 7th century Arabia? I mean, it's easy to dismiss events that happened so long ago as, irrelevant to our lives today. But this text seems to argue that the Saqifah conference had this ripple effect that, extended far beyond that moment in time.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, this deep dive isn't just about, unearthing historical details, right? It's about understanding how those details continue to shape our understanding of the past and how they kind of inform perspectives on the present.
So are you saying that this event, despite taking place, centuries ago, still holds relevance for us today?
Absolutely, yeah. The issues that are at the heart of the Saqifah conference, leadership, legitimacy, justice, the balance of power, those are as relevant now as they were then.
Can you give me some examples? How do those themes, connect to like contemporary issues within Muslim communities?
Well, think about, the ongoing discussions about the role of religious leadership, the interpretation of Islamic texts, and the pursuit of social and political justice. Many of these conversations are directly linked to the events that transpired during this very early period of Islamic history.
So understanding the Saqifah conference, especially from the perspective presented in this text, can give us a deeper understanding of like the roots of these contemporary challenges.
Precisely, yeah. It's not about, dwelling on the past or assigning blame or anything like that. It's about using history as a tool to kind of analyze present-day issues and perhaps even find new ways to address them.
It sounds like this deep dive, right? It's like it goes beyond a simple history lesson. It's almost like a case study, in leadership, power dynamics, and the lasting impact of choices made by those in authority.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And this particular text, by offering this critical perspective on the Saqifah conference, it really encourages us to question established narratives and think critically about how history is presented and interpreted, right?
That's a crucial point. I think, we often just accept historical accounts at face value, but this text reminds us that history is often told from the perspective of, those who were victorious, those who won.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to consider alternative perspectives, especially those that challenge that dominant narrative, right? This text, by amplifying the voices of those who felt marginalized and silenced, offers a valuable counter-narrative to the more widely accepted versions of events.
It's like, we're piecing together a puzzle, and each new perspective, each piece of evidence just adds a new layer to that overall picture.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And as we've discussed, this text brings the human element of history to the forefront. It's not just dates and names, right? It's about real people grappling with these really complex challenges, making difficult decisions and facing the consequences of those decisions.
It makes history feel, more relatable. It reminds us that these historical figures weren't just symbols or icons. They were individuals with their own, aspirations, flaws, and vulnerabilities, just like us.
Exactly. And by trying to understand their motivations and the difficult circumstances that they faced, we can develop a more nuanced appreciation for the complexities of this period and the challenges that the early Muslim community had to overcome.
This deep dive has certainly given me a lot to ponder. What aspects of this exploration stood out to you? What, sparked your curiosity and made you want to, delve deeper into this period of Islamic history?
Well, for me, it's the lasting legacy of the Saqifah conference that I find most compelling. The text argues that this event set in motion a series of events that shaped the trajectory of Islamic history for centuries to come. And it really compels us to contemplate the nature of leadership in Muslim societies, the role of consensus and dissent in Islamic thought, and the ongoing pursuit of social and political justice within Muslim communities, worldwide.
It really drives home the point that even events that seem far removed from our present reality can have a, profound and enduring impact.
Absolutely, yeah. This text encourages us to wrestle with that legacy, to examine our own preconceptions, and to engage in thoughtful and meaningful dialogue about how to build a more just and equitable world, drawing lessons from the past to kind of guide our actions in the present.
This has been a really insightful deep dive. I think we've gone beyond the surface level, understanding of the Saqifah conference and really explored a perspective that challenges us to rethink the events that shaped this crucial period in Islamic history.
Yeah. We've uncovered allegations of conspiracy, betrayal, and the suppression of dissenting voices. But most importantly, I think we've gained a deeper understanding of the complex motivations of the key players and the really difficult choices that they faced.
So thank you for guiding us through this very thought-provoking exploration. And to our listener, we encourage you to continue this journey of discovery, explore other perspectives, delve into different sources, and really form your own conclusions about the significance of the Saqifah conference and its implications for, the Muslim world today.